Welcome to this explainer where we unpack Adam Khoo's proven strategies. Today, we're zeroing in on one massive goal, growing your money at millionaire returns. And look, the best part is that achieving these kinds of numbers isn't some dark art reserved for Wall Street insiders. It's totally accessible to us. We're drawing straight from Khoo's own research and his real-life journey to becoming a self-made millionaire by the time he was 26 to give you a highly practical roadmap.
So let's just jump right in with a question that kind of flips the whole high return always equals high risk idea on its head. Can you actually get a 12.08% return, essentially risk-free, over the long haul? Well, according to the source material, the answer is an absolute yes. And we're going to look at exactly how you pull that off and even how you might push past it.
To unlock those returns, we're basically climbing a four-step ladder today. We'll start with the mindset of wealth, look at the magic of compounding, explore the 4 money baskets, and finally scale the 3 tiers of returns.
Starting off with Section 1, the mindset of wealth and cash flow management.
Because at the end of the day, building wealth isn't really about your salary. It's about your system. It's how you manage what actually stays in your hands. The typical middle-class trap is pretty cyclical, right? You earn a paycheck, you spend a ton on lifestyle, and then you just sort of save whatever happens to be left. And usually those so-called savings end up tied up in negative cash flow liabilities, things like oversized mortgages or car loans that constantly bleed your wallet. But the wealthy, they take a totally different route. They earn and they immediately pay themselves first, grabbing like 15 to 20% right off the top. Then they invest that chunk into positive cash flow assets, like strong businesses or dividend stocks. And here's the real kicker. They only ever buy luxuries using the new passive income generated by those assets. They literally never drain their core wealth.
Moving on to Section 2, the magic of compounding, which is all about time and your rate of return.
Because once you've actually built that habit of paying yourself first, compounding becomes the absolute engine of your wealth. Just look at how staggering the difference is when you bump up that rate. Say you save $300 a month. At a standard 4% bank rate, 30 years of grinding gets you about $108,000. I mean, it's okay, but it's not exactly life-changing. But if you can hit that 12.08% return, that exact same $300 a month explodes into the millions. It starts out deceptively slow, but over the decades, the math goes totally exponential. The curve sweeps upward so aggressively that time is basically doing all the heavy lifting for you.
All right, Section 3, the 4 money baskets, which is how we strategically allocate those savings.
Because before you go out chasing those massive returns, you absolutely have to protect your baseline. Think of your money as water flowing through a series of buckets. First, you have to fill your security basket. We're talking 3 to 6 months of emergency cash, sitting safe and sound in fixed deposits, just keeping pace with inflation. That is your financial moat. Once that basket is brimming, the overflow gets directed into your growth and high-growth investments. And that fourth basket? Luxury. Remember the golden rule. You never fund this from your day job. You only take that dream vacation using the passive income your growth baskets just printed for you. It's an infinite loop.
Now, exactly how you fill those baskets depends heavily on where you're at in life. If you're younger, say in your 20s or 30s, you can be super aggressive. You might put up to 70% of your savings into growth and high growth, simply because you've got the time to ride out any inevitable market turbulence. But if you're inching closer to retirement, you flip it. You anchor 70% in security to guarantee that steady cash flow. Yet regardless of your age, the ultimate wealth hack, the absolute non-negotiable, is reinvesting 80% of your returns right back into the machine. You have to keep that compounding engine fed.
And that brings us to Section 4, the 3 tiers of returns, where we climb the ladder to 25% growth.
So how do we actually juice those growth baskets? You've got 3 distinct battlegrounds: buying the market, using mutual funds, or picking individual stocks. As you level up, your potential upside absolutely skyrockets. But, and you really need to hear this, your risk only stays low if your financial IQ rises at the exact same pace. You literally cannot play a level 3 game with level 1 knowledge. Let's break them down.
Level 1 is by far the easiest path. It's buying the market through index ETFs like the S&P 500. Remember that 12.08% number we talked about earlier? Well, over the last 50 years, the US stock market has historically averaged just over 12% annually. By simply buying a tiny slice of the whole market and doing absolutely nothing, like literally just sitting on your hands, you capture that average. It's the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it wealth builder.
Level 2 gets a bit more aggressive. This is where you try to beat that boring market average using mutual funds targeting 13 to 20%. The pitch sounds great, right? You hand your money over to a brilliant, highly paid professional fund manager, sit back, and let them pick the winners. But you gotta watch out, because there is a massive catch here.
The source material drops a pretty shocking reality check on us. Less than 10% of those fancy mutual fund managers actually beat the simple market index in a given year. And honestly, it gets worse, because it's usually a completely different 10% the next year. Statistically, less than 3% of funds consistently outperform the market over the long term. Seriously, you'd almost be better off throwing darts blindfolded than blindly trusting an average mutual fund.
So if you're going to play the level 2 game, you have to be incredibly strategic. First, ignore the flashy funds bragging about last year's massive returns. They're almost always riding a hype wave that's about to crash. Instead, you're hunting for that ultra-rare 3% of funds with a proven 10-year track record of consistently beating the S&P 500. Plus, you absolutely must insist on no-load funds with zero sales charges and demand the absolute lowest expense ratios. Otherwise, hidden management fees are just going to quietly bleed your wealth dry behind your back.
And finally, we arrive at the pinnacle, level 3. This is where you target those true millionaire returns of 15 to 25% by picking individual winning stocks. But let's be crystal clear. You aren't just swiping on a trading app based on some internet rumor. You have to operate like a forensic analyst, buying literal pieces of highly profitable, real-world businesses.
To survive at this level, you have to adopt the exact mindset of the greats, like Warren Buffett. His entire philosophy is essentially 2 rules. Rule 1, never lose money. Rule 2, don't forget rule number 1. Extreme capital preservation is the whole ballgame. These guys aren't at a casino hoping to hit the jackpot. They're calculating risk with surgical precision.
So how does that look in practice? Well, first, you only invest in businesses you actually understand. If you can't sketch out how they make their money on a napkin, walk away. You're looking for a company with a massive economic moat, a durable advantage that crushes competitors, and a rock-solid history of earnings. Then comes the real test, patience. You basically hide in the weeds, refusing to buy until the intrinsic value of that business is way, way higher than its current stock price. You only strike when you can buy $1 for 50 cents.
Look, as we wrap up this explainer, it's clear the roadmap to growing your money at Millionaire returns is totally within reach, whether you take the passive index route or you meticulously pick individual stocks. But none of this math matters if your baseline cash flow is a mess. So take a hard look at your habits today. Are you genuinely paying yourself first and buying your future freedom, or are you just making everybody else rich with whatever happens to be left over? The choice you make right now really does dictate your whole financial future.